Tonight, is chip and pin really as safe as the banks say?
PIN is 8046.
Here's the test that proves they're wrong.
The boiler that's in 1 million homes, but is it reliable?
And the kitchen fitter who did this to our car. That's Watchdog tonight. Hello, good to see you. We're live from the office where tonight, as you may have seen on the news, Watchdog is asking if Britain's banks are playing fair when someone steals money from your account.
Unless it was your fault, the bank's own rules say that they should give you the money back. But lots of you have told us that that's not always what happens. They could even blame you. And it's all to do with this, your chip and pin card.
Now, when these came in last year, everyone says could be cracked. Well, wait till you see what we've been able to do on an ordinary high street. That's coming up later.
We'll also have the latest on that notorious cruise offer run by the Daily Express. It's taken almost 3 years, but the Express did promise they'd resolve things. And now they have, but not the way you'd expect.
Of course, you can text us on that or any of our stories on 83199. Just type WD, followed by your message.
Or you can call us or you can email us. The details are on the screen right now, and we'll read them out later in the programme.
But first, if you're not sure what kind of boiler you've got, this may make you want to check. The one we're talking about is used by millions of us to keep warm. So if you've not got it, you'll definitely know someone who has. And maybe this could happen to them.
Imagine waking up to a freezing cold house. No heating, no hot water, and no warning. In the middle of the British winter. If it's a one-off, you can forgive the occasional boiler breakdown. But it's altogether a different matter when it's happening time after time after time. Well, if you own one of the most popular boilers in Britain, this could be you. Potterton's Suprema boiler has been installed in over 1 million homes in the UK. They've been making boilers for 150 years and say they're reassuringly reliable. But we've been hearing from people who'd beg to differ, and they're steaming mad about it. A year and a half after moving into her brand new house, Shane Dean's reassuringly reliable Suprema boiler began playing up.
In the mornings I'd wake up, it'd be freezing cold, so I'd have to run downstairs and reset the boiler because we were having freezing cold showers. In the evenings when I got home from work, I'd come into a freezing cold house and I'd have to reset the boiler. And I'd have to keep on doing that all through the evening, 2, 3, 4 times. And it really was becoming extremely annoying.
Shane's plumber told her there was a fault with the Suprema's circuit board. She could restart the boiler herself, but until the faulty part was totally replaced, it would just keep switching off. But Potterton told Shane there was no known problem with either the Suprema or the circuit board. Which is strange, because they've been saying exactly the same thing to people experiencing exactly the same problem all over the country.
The plumber came and he said that it's a known fault and everybody in the trade knows that. So when I wrote to Potterton, I wasn't expecting them to deny all knowledge.
We called the engineer. He said that he'd replaced several circuit boards that week and he was due to fix 3 more circuit boards the following day.
They flatly denied that anybody had ever complained about a circuit board before. They reckoned I was the first one.
With parts and labour, it can cost as much as £300 to get this circuit board replaced. That is roughly half the cost of the entire boiler.
It's been horrendous. Just the things that you take for granted, your hot water and your central heating in a new house, you wouldn't expect for those things to go as wrong as they have.
From Aberdeen to Somerset, it's the same story. The boiler goes on the blink, the circuit board is identified as the problem, but you'll have to pay to replace it. Yeovil is the last stop on my boiler road trip. Now let me guess, your problem was the circuit board, is it?
Yes. About a year ago, it kept locking out. We had to keep pressing the reset button. And then again last year it started doing again, and the heating completely cut out. No hot water, and we were without heating for a few weeks.
And how inconvenient was that?
Extremely. Like I said, with a baby that's 3 months old, no heating, a daughter that gets asthma if she gets a cold. It's just not funny.
Still, on an estate like this, you can always rely on your neighbours, can't you? You can just pop round to the friendly folk next door for a nice hot shower, can't you? No, not round here you can't. The neighbours are friendly, all right, but same boiler, same problem.
We had to keep pressing the reset button, so we called out Potterton and it needed to have a new circuit board.
The part was £200 that they had to buy, and then £50 having it fitted.
If it breaks down in the winter months, it's obviously cold for quite a long time before you can get somebody to fix it. So, yeah, it's very inconvenient.
And the same things happened here, 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 and here. In fact, 2/3 of the people we've met on this estate have had the same problem with their Suprema boiler. And whenever anyone contacts Potterton, they're told there is no common fault. But when we rang, they almost gave the game away. It seems they do know there's a problem after all.
Can't admit liability on that, I'm afraid, because all I can say is that we've had some cases of Supremas being faulty with their PCBs, but not enough to validate a claim against us.
And while Potterton aren't admitting to their customers they're at fault, in 2003 they told British Gas there was a problem, and they were redesigning the circuit board. And, lo and behold, when the circuit board is replaced, the problem usually goes away.
I really wish that Potterton had done the right thing by their customers. They're a very large company, and they could have quite easily helped us out, and with such an expensive part to replace, especially with a boiler that's so young.
So, here's a little tip for Potterton. You're in the heating business. How about spreading a little winter warmth yourselves and stop asking some of your customers to fork out their money to fix a problem that is your fault?
Well, Potterton didn't want to come in, but they apologised to customers who've had problems with the performance of the older types of Suprema boiler. They say all their products are fully tested and have a minimum 12-month warranty, and that the issue of circuit board failure is not always clear-cut. Sometimes the problem can be lack of service or maintenance. But if you are having trouble, they set up a free phone number to discuss a solution. That number, 0800 328 2747, and you'll also see that number on our website.
We've had lots of emails about other stories as well this week. More about Renault Clio, and plenty from people who've been hounded by debt collection companies for money they just don't owe. Some of you keep getting hassled even after you've made it perfectly clear that they're going after the wrong person.
Well, we will be looking at this story again, so keep your emails coming. In the meantime, ask for written proof of the debt. They are obliged by law to send it. Now, we also had a big response to our story about glazing company St Helens Glass. They say in their ads they've got the class, but they've also got some very unhappy customers.
Well, the Office of Fair Trading has told us they're considering whether to renew the company's credit licence. They only grant licences to businesses they're satisfied are fit to have one. And they say they'd welcome any further information relevant to the application of St Helens Glass, so we'll keep you posted.
And next, a kitchen fitter whose work can go beyond outrageous. It can be terrifying. No wonder some customers end up calling the police. Nick Lawrence is on his trail.
I'm in Hull on the trail of a kitchen company and a kitchen fitter with, let's say, a bad reputation in this part of the world. Bad workmanship, bad electrics, bad temper. Okay, this is what we know. This is John Park, and this is his 4x4, which, as you can see, is emblazoned with the name of his business, Sutton Kitchens, Bedrooms and Bathrooms. And this is a house where he fitted a kitchen last December, which, from what I understand, didn't quite go to plan. Gary Hempshire was horrified with the standard of John Park's work.
If you come to the sink...
Oh dear.
The drawer won't open. This
dear. But the most noticeable problem with Gary's kitchen is the cupboard doors. There aren't any. And the microwave's missing too. Where have they gone?
Well, basically, Mr. Park came down and said he was here to finish the kitchen and wanted final payment. And I explained to him that I wasn't happy with the quality of the workmanship and that I would prefer to have a second opinion.
John Park wasn't interested in second opinions. He wanted his cash there and then and refused to leave. Gary went to phone the police. While he was in the other room, John Park set to work. But he wasn't finishing the kitchen, he was taking it apart. He didn't want to wait for the police, so he took Gary's cupboard doors and microwave and escaped through a window. Incredibly, the Hempshaws aren't the only one to have to call the police to a John Park job gone wrong. Like Gary, Jean Hudson wasn't happy with the workmanship on her £7,000 kitchen.
I'd been in touch with trading standards and they said don't pay any more money until you're happy with the job. And it was going to cost £1,500 to put it right.
Jean told John Park he could have the final amount when the job was done properly. But he wanted his final £800 there and then. Jean recorded the conversation.
I am not refusing to pay, but I want the kitchen right, as it should be.
At that point, John Park threatened to remove Jean's new kitchen appliances.
You haven't paid for it, it's my stuff, and the stuff cannot stay in this house because it's ours.
He went across there and he dragged the dishwasher out and I said, you're not taking anything. And I shoved the dishwasher back, said, get out my house, John. And he said, I'm not going anywhere. So I said to my daughter who was here, just Michelle, ring the police up.
After nearly 3 hours, John Park left Jean's house empty-handed, once again narrowly avoiding a confrontation with the police. And it gets worse. One family paid for a kitchen 6 months ago, and they still haven't received so much as a doorknob.
I was going to have an oven and a microwave here. The sink was going to be there, a wall unit here, which I'd never had before, a tiny little breakfast area here. We've paid John Park and Nicky Park up until now £14,000.
Once he got the money up front, John Park ripped out the old kitchen and started on the electrics. But when the checks had cleared, Sutton Kitchens, Bedrooms and Bathrooms Limited abandoned the job, and it hadn't been a good one.
We noticed that, there were certain things that were not quite right. We're left with bare live wires sticking out of the wall and coming out through the floor.
Worried her home was in a dangerous state, Bindu called the council.
Immediately, they sent a building control officer down who looked at the works and basically said the electrics were dangerous, stop what you're doing, and they condemned the work that had been done.
The council said it was so hazardous the family had to leave the home. Bindu has had to pay a qualified electrician £5,000 to make John Park's electrics safe. This is a secret recording that Bindu took when council officers demanded to meet the electrician responsible. John Park denied it was anything to do with him.
The breaker been left off. Yeah, it's not exactly that. I'm not an electrician, you see.
He even denied he was John Park. That's John Park.
Yes, it is.
That's not Mike Rispin.
No, not at all.
Stealing microwaves, cupboard doors, and now identities. Is there anything John Park wouldn't do? Pay his bills. In 2004, the courts declared him bankrupt. On top of that, John Park and Sutton Kitchens have had 21 county court judgments against them, worth £33,000. John Park doesn't just have a bad reputation with the courts. Hull Trading Standards has been hearing about him for some time.
We've had, I would say, a significant number of complaints about this business, many of which we would consider to be very serious matters involving a lot of money. And we've investigated them all, and as a result we've submitted a detailed report to our solicitor.
And at the company premises, neighbouring businesses say the showroom of Sutton Kitchens, Bedrooms and Bathrooms Limited has not been open for 3 weeks. The shutters are down, but the game's up. I need to ask John Park some questions. Hi, John Park. John Park. Hello, John. It's Nick Lawrence, BBC Watchdog. That's John Park, sprinting into the darkness. We follow, with his accomplice chasing us, throwing bottles as he goes. We just want to have a chat! John Park gave us the slip, but he found his way back to our car. Well, we we just got back to one of our vehicles, and while all that was going on, a BBC researcher witnessed John Park and an accomplice doing this. They slashed all the tyres on this vehicle. They put a massive scratch down the side and danced up and down on the bonnet, causing an awful lot of damage. Very interesting handiwork, interesting people to do business with.
Well, since then, John Park's wife, the director of Sutton Kitchens, Bedrooms and Bathrooms Limited, has been in touch. She disputes what happened in all of our cases and blames the customers for refusing payment. She says that's one of the reasons why the company has now ceased trading. Meanwhile, we'll be talking to the police about the damage to the car.
Now, it's almost 3 years since the Daily Express ran what seemed the greatest of us since, well, remember those free Hoovers with the flights.
Certainly do. The Express, which calls itself the world's greatest newspaper, offered a week-long cruise for just £10. All you had to do was collect 35 tokens, and that was it. All taxes and meals included. And, as they said at the time, no catch.
Unfortunately, for many of the people who took them at their word, there was no cruise either. 40,000 people applied for the offer. Some did get cruises, others were given dates that were cancelled, and some were just offered discount vouchers. Hardly the same thing as an all-in cruise. The closest some people got to that was when we took them along the Thames to the Daily Express offices. But the paper's managing director promised on Watchdog they'd put things right.
The Daily Express is one of the world's great newspapers, and we pride ourselves on delivering on our commitments totally and fully.
Well, he sounded pretty definite. And in July 2005, the Express sent out letters saying although there was limited capacity on the cruises, they would be offering an alternative. That could be cash, holidays, a long-haul flight. Not what they'd promised, but maybe not too bad.
Well, believe it or not, it gets worse. After months of silence, the Express has now sent out another letter. In fact, it's from the same managing director who'd promised he'd sort it all out. But now he's telling people their claims can't be validated. Now, after all this, they'll get nothing. And as far as the Express is concerned, that's the end of it.
Pauline Massey is one of the people who's had that letter. She joins us now by webcam. Hello, Pauline. As far as the Express is concerned, that's the end of it. So what do you make of that?
Hi, Julia. I am appalled. I really cannot understand how a newspaper can go back on their word. The last letter I received from them states that there were a number of steps to complete over and above the collection of the vouchers from the newspaper. However, there's nothing else mentioned in the terms and conditions.
Right. Before the most recent letter, have they ever said to you that your application wasn't valid?
No, never. I actually had a letter from them dated in October 04 when they gave me the name of the cruise liner, the date and the itinerary for the cruise.
So you got some cruise dates. There's another letter I've got here from them to you, July 2005, in which they say, in an attempt to resolve the situation, you'll be offered an alternative to the cruise. It could be cash, could be another holiday or a long-haul flight. You haven't had any of those things, have you?
Nothing at all, Julia, nothing at all.
So what do you think about the Daily Express now?
Well, I think it's extremely disgraceful and a total breach of contract. I don't think a daily newspaper should promise something they can't deliver and be able to get away with it. There's hundreds of people like myself who have been let down.
Well, Pauline, thanks very much for talking to us. We're very sorry that your holiday plans have been sunk.
Thank you very much, Julia.
OK.
OK, bye.
Well, loads of former Express readers have emailed saying the same thing. Judy Kay says she can't understand how a supposedly reputable national newspaper can get away with such a flagrant breach of trust.
We asked the Express newspapers if they'd come in. They wouldn't. All they did say was they're dealing with inquiries about this promotion on a case-by-case basis, and the details are confidential.
Maybe it really is true that you just can't believe everything you read in the papers.
Next tonight, the Watchdog story about the banks that's made headlines today, with an exclusive experiment that begs the question, is chip and pin really as safe as we've been told? If someone stole your bank card and used it to withdraw money from your account before you'd had a chance to realise it was gone, you'd presume you're entitled to get your money back, wouldn't you? Imagine if the bank said no. Imagine if they told you it was your fault, that you'd been negligent, that the only way someone could take your money is if you'd given them your PIN number. That's exactly what happened to Suzanne Lewis. While she was on holiday in Devon, someone else was using her card to take money from cash points in London. It seemed like an open and shut case.
In total, there was £1,400 withdrawn from 6 transactions over a period of 3 or 4 days. I wasn't even in the area. I don't even know these cash machines. I didn't think there would even be any question mark about the loss of the money.
But Barclays refused to pay out. Because her PIN number had been used, they decided that she must either have written it down or shown it to someone else. But Suzanne is adamant this wasn't the case.
I just couldn't believe it. Total and utter disbelief. And what more can you say to these people? You're not even in the area. You tell them that you haven't given your PIN number to anybody. What more can you say to them to make them believe you?
This is a chip and PIN card. The UK switched them a year ago. They were supposed to make our transactions more secure. The irony is that when things do go wrong, it now looks like we're less protected than we were before.
In the days when proving that you'd authorised a transaction involved producing a piece of paper with your signature on, it was relatively easy for everyone to know whether you'd authorised it or not. The banks have introduced a system with a PIN which simply takes that clear proof away.
In the past, if your signature had been forged, by law the banks had to pay out. But there is no law to cover PIN transactions. The only thing protecting the consumer is the banking code, a voluntary code of practice that all banks are signed up to. The banking code says it's up to the banks to prove that you've been negligent. If they can't, then they have to give you your money back. But that's not what's been happening. Since chip and PIN came in, it's up to you to prove that you've done nothing wrong. Betty Tanner was in London when her card was stolen and £2,000 taken from her Alliance and Leicester account.
Apparently they'd spent the money on an upmarket jeweller's and I felt devastated. I went into the bank and I asked them what I was going to do about my bills. And the young lady shrugged her shoulders and said, "Poor you, you'll have to have an overdraft." I've never been in debt in my life, ever. Never owed anybody anything.
Alliance and Leicester refused to reimburse her. She appealed to the Financial Ombudsman.
The Ombudsman said he felt that because a PIN number had been used, that I was negligent, and he found for the bank. I don't know how they came to this decision of not reimbursing me, because I have never used my card in an ATM, ever, and I have never written it down, and I have never given it to anybody else.
The reason the banks take such a hard line is because they assume chip and PIN is unbreakable. But the banks are wrong. We know of at least one way that chip and PIN can be vulnerable. These Cambridge University researchers, Stephen and Saar, are about to show us that they can access chip and PIN information from somebody else's card. Here's the victim, one of our team about to pay for his lunch. It's going to prove very expensive. In a bookshop a few doors down the road, Stephen is waiting to hijack his chip and PIN details. He'll be using a fake card linked to a computer hidden in this backpack. Stephen has an accomplice. Saar is working in the cafe where he's tampered with the chip and PIN machine. Instead of sending information to the bank, card details will be sent wirelessly to the computer in the backpack instead.
I've got a customer.
Ready to go, Saar tips off Stephen in the bookshop, who's in position to make his own purchase. It's more expensive, but he doesn't plan to use his own money. The customer in the cafe keys in his PIN to pay his £5 bill. As he does so, his chip and PIN details are automatically sent to Stephen in the bookshop.
PIN is 8046.
He enters the hijacked PIN to buy his books. It's all gone through. Both the chip and the PIN have been read by the terminal in the bookshop. The victim in the cafe thinks he spent £5. In fact, his card has been charged £50, but he won't be able to prove he didn't spend it. So, Stephen, what has just happened?
I've just bought £50 of goods with this fake card, but the money has actually come off someone else's card in a different location. The transaction was verified with the chip and the PIN, and that's going to show up on our victim statement. This shows that the hard line that the banks are taking on victims of fraud is not fair. There is no such thing as a 100% secure system, and chip and pin is not an exception to this rule.
And if chip and pin is not 100% secure, then the bank should not be turning down compensation claims from its customers on the basis that the system cannot be beaten.
It seems that when a customer rejects a transaction, the bank's first response is really quite cursory. It looks to see if the pin was used, and if it was, it says it must be the customer's fault, without considering any of the other possibilities, and I think that is quite monstrous.
I think they should have given me the benefit of the doubt, reimbursed me enough to pay my bills, and if at the end of the day they found I'd been negligent, which I know they won't, then I would reimburse them back.
I just felt it was a personal affront to my integrity because they obviously didn't believe me, and I felt powerless to prove otherwise.
None of our cases know how their money was stolen, nor do the banks. But that hasn't stopped them ignoring their own banking code and making the customers pay out. No wonder some of them feel as if they've been robbed twice. Well, after we got in touch, Barclays have refunded Suzanne Lewis her £1,400. They say that's because we provided extra details about the fraud, which they hadn't previously known, though, in fact, we didn't tell them anything more than she had in the first place. But there's no such joy for pensioner Betty Tanner, the other case in our film. The Alliance and Leicester are sticking to their decision not to give her her money.
Sandra Quinn from Apax joins us. Apax speak for the banks on chip and pin. Sandra, clearly the banks are willfully ignoring their own code. They have moved the goalposts.
Well, the code has been the code for 15 years now. The burden of proof lies very clearly with the banks. And let's remember that we've been using PIN at cash machines for a long time before we used PIN with chip and pin. So the code has not changed in any way, and we wouldn't expect the banks to interpret it any differently.
But they are, aren't they? It says quite clearly the onus is on card providers to prove the customer has acted negligently rather than the other way around. That is not happening.
The issue is about how do you prove negligence. So you've got two very distinct instances. If somebody, a fraudster for example, saw my PIN and then got hold of it, that would be a fraudster. That wouldn't be negligent on myself, the cardholder's instance. However, if I'd copied my PIN down and left that in my handbag and my card was stolen.
These people haven't done that. So clearly it's not negligence, it's not fraud. Given what we've seen, what is your message to the banks?
Well, there's two messages here. One to the banks to say we're looking at how negligence can be proved, and the banking code is under review this year. That'll be a key issue for the banking code review to look at. And one to card holders and customers. One, obviously, to look after your PIN at all times. But two,
no, please. These people have done that. I want you to acknowledge the banks could do more and are not doing enough.
Well, the one thing that banks perhaps should be more upfront about is looking at the letter they write to their customers and telling them the kind of information they've looked at to prove their case.
Well, we saw what the Cambridge academics did. Now, they're very, very clever, clearly, but crooks are cleverer.
Crooks are clever, certainly. Fraudsters are clever. We've never said that chip and pin is infallible. What we very carefully said...
Well, some of the banks give that impression, don't they?
Well, chip and pin isn't infallible. No system, unfortunately, in this day and age is 100% secure. The key thing here is that if a customer feels they're a victim of fraud, they should go to their bank, and their bank should treat their case fairly.
OK, Sandra, thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on to your pins. If you knew of something that we should investigate, then this is how you tell us. You can email us at bbc.co.uk/watchdog or call us on 0208 535 1000.
Or you can write to us, Watchdog BBC TV, London, W127TS.
Or you can text us, which is what Nathan Maxwell has done. I was contacted by my bank's fraud division about an illegal use of my card. We agreed on the phone that it was a fraudulent transaction, but I was then accused of either using the card myself or getting a friend to do it.
The one from Norway here. Can't understand how the British government spends so much on chip and pin and don't put a photograph on the card. We've got them in Norway. We'll be back at the same time next week looking at a big name in the news and one of their products that keeps packing up.
Thanks for watching. Until next week, good night.
Good night.